So President Cyril Ramaphosa is looking forward to the start of the work of the National Dialogue team that was set up and announced, in fact, yesterday. The main event, or the first of the big events, will be held on the 15th of August. The aim here is to basically shape South Africa's future through inclusive dialogue. The initiative is expected to bring together voices from across sectors of society, including politics, civil society, business, and even sports and entertainment personalities. The president named 31 eminent people who will lead and champion this cause. Let's speak further about this with political analyst Prof Dirk Kotze. Good to have your time on the SABC, sir. Welcome as always. So this has been questioned in the last few hours as whether it's a genuine opportunity at a transformative process or another talk shop in the making with a hefty price tag. How do you read it, Prof?
Well, good evening. Yes, I think it's, as you indicate, it has been announced by President Ramaphosa in his SONA speech. Then it was included in this declaration of intent, the statement of intent of the Government of National Unity. And so this is now a follow-up in that respect. I think, first of all, I think the hope is that it's not a talk shop and it is an opportunity to deal with some of the very important issues. Think, for example, about what we've experienced not long ago about this notion of a genocide and of refugees. It means that our society needs to have more of a dialogue, of a discussion about many aspects. In other countries, they sometimes talk about the idea of a social compact, for example, between government and business groups. I think here the idea is that it must go further than that, and it must developed a type of a national consensus, which to a large extent hasn't been followed up after the negotiations of the 1990s. It's in a sense a vacuum that developed over time. Instead of continuing with that, maybe even after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there was not really a follow-up with that also. So I think to a large extent, in the most positive version of it, I think this is what should be some of the focus. Over and above the issues that President Ramaphosa referred to in his statement yesterday, about the many issues, the many absolutely serious problems in our society, like the socioeconomic ones, about unemployment, about crime, and so on, that more of a consensus over time should develop, because Netluck was there in order to negotiate between the different sectors of society, government, organized business, organized labor, and civil society. But it's not very effective at the moment in that respect. And I think, therefore, some additional mechanisms are really necessary for that.
But has government perhaps not thrown too much into one pot at once when you consider just the raft of challenges that this process is expected to deal with, to address at the very least at the same time? When you look at uniting South Africa, this country is divided on multiple levels, not least of which along racial lines. You look at the alarming scale of gender-based violence and femicide, unemployment, joblessness, etc. Should they all be under one umbrella at once?
I think that is a risk, that it is overloading the agenda, and that it is mainly concentrated at the top. I've read this statement of President Ramaphosa and tried to determine to what extent it's going to be wider than that. Now, I think where there is some indication of that is that after the 15th of August, that it should go into the different components and at different levels until early next year. Now, that's not very much time in order to do that. And it is also a very very loaded agenda that will have to be dealt with. And I think what is necessary is, in my personal view, I would like to see that this type of dialogue must also be decentralized to the local level. For example, what for me remains a very good example was around about 1993-94, when the local negotiations at local government level took place in order to negotiate the transitional local authorities or the transitional metro councils. It wasn't done at CODESA or at national level, but at local level. And I think that's an example that can be revisited in order to be used as a point of where local communities, local, even at whether it's at metro level or a lower level, can also be involved in it, and not only the national leaders or the national personalities. So if that is the case, then I think it does have a chance because it will develop also more better local relationships that can be used for the future. But if it is that by the beginning of next year, this process comes to an end after the second national convention, I think that's too little time for that.
And what you're talking about there is basically distilling the information and the participation process to make it truly inclusive. Buy-in then from citizens beyond this list of about 31, 32 eminent persons is going to be crucial, is it not, Prof, in deciding whether or not it is as national a dialogue as it's meant to be in the true sense of the phrase.
Yes, I very much agree with what you are saying. And I think what we should also guard against that it becomes a political dialogue because it should go beyond the different political parties. What is encouraging is that this list of 31 does not necessarily include politicians and a lot of former politicians, but rather persons coming from different parts of society. But at the National Convention, the political parties will be. They are mentioned amongst the different interest groups that will be there. And I think one should guard that they will take the lead because this is not in essence only a political dialogue. It must be a dialogue that goes beyond just the political issues and the political role players that can dominate this.
And in terms of the champions, these eminent persons, how clear is the role that they're going to play when you consider that it's a list that includes the clergy, for example, the two leaders of the ZCC churches. You've got Archbishop Makgoba from the Anglican Church. You've even got the Springbok captain, Siya Kolisi, in the mix, the former Miss South Africa, Mia Leroux, as well, and then business people like Bobby Gotzel, etc. What should their role be for it to be worth not just their time, but the public purse if they're going to be compensated?
Well, it's not clear from the declaration or the statement by President Ramaphosa. For me, they look to be champions of this, but not necessarily a type of an organizing committee. But it's not made clear to what
ambassadors,
will be the function of.
Am I right in
Yes.
the reading that they would basically be ambassadors at this stage in its phrasing, because there are, for example, committees that are supposed to be established to do the real groundwork?
Yes, that is indeed so. But how they're going to be used, that's not clear. Who's going to take the initiative? Will they come together? Will they meet? Will they discuss? Or will they, in their own way, be able just simply to promote the idea? That in itself, therefore, for me personally, is not yet clear. Hopefully that will be clarified also. The one aspect which I would have liked to see amongst them is more persons who are younger. It's a bit of a group of old persons. Yes, they've played a very important role in South Africa's history over time, many of them, like Dr. Prigalia Bam and others. But I think the purpose of this dialogue is to bring in especially the younger generations, because many of the issues that we are talking about, unemployment, about crime and all sorts of things, directly affect them. So I think for the credibility of this initiative or this approach, I think they should possibly go beyond that. But I think one hopes that this is only the beginning of it and not necessarily that it has already been concluded in terms of who are going to be the leading personalities in this process.
Professor Dirk Kotze, a pleasure to have your time. Thank you so much for being on the SABC.